Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast, where we bring you the best growth strategies from the world's experts to help build your business fast. And now, here's your host, Mark Fidelman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast. Joining me today is Roy Harmon, and we're going to talk about how to do inbound marketing really, really well. And we've got a great guest today that's going to talk about behavioral targeting during the customer journey. I mean, this is advanced stuff, but it's important stuff. It's going to help you if you, especially if you've got an e-commerce program or you got any kind of program that requires traffic sent to your website. If you live or die by traffic and you don't want to stand by as Google and Facebook change their advertising policies or their SEO policies, then this is going to be something you're going to want to listen to. So, Roy, welcome to the show. Can you give everyone a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me on the show. I started out in marketing about 10 years ago now, and I've worked in a number of industries: political, healthcare, automotive. These days, I do mainly SaaS and startups. So one thing I've noticed throughout the course of these 10 years is that a lot of these concepts apply to every industry, and you just have to, tweak them based on your understanding of your verticals. So I really hope that all your listeners will get a lot out of this.
I think they will. And, a good segue to what will we get out of this? And my first question to you, Roy, is let's define what you mean by inbound marketing. Is that just traffic to your website? Is it other things? How are we kind of putting a frame around what we're going to talk about today?
When I talk about inbound marketing, I'm talking about the idea that rather than broadcast your advertising to everybody or to broad swaths of people, you're going to get more granular and develop a heightened sense of where each one of your prospects is, so that you're able to send them targeted messaging, things that are relevant to them based on where they're at in the buyer's journey.
And how do you know where someone is at the buyer's journey? What are you setting up so that you can understand where they are? Is it kind of this anonymous funnel, or is it a very intelligent funnel that tracks people as they go through it, and then you're giving them content along the way? How is that all set up?
Depending on how you do it, it can be very, you can know a lot, but then you can also do it in a way to where it's more anonymous. And with the way data privacy is going, it's likely going to end up in an area where it's more anonymous. And when I say anonymous, I mean you don't know A went to X and B went to Y, but you're going to have an idea that these 100 people went to X. These 250 other people were here. So you'll have an idea. You can send people marketing based on where they've been. And you can do that right now you can use HubSpot and tools like that. And with HubSpot, you can know John Doe went to my pricing page. I should probably send him an email about getting a demo, or maybe one of my salespeople should give him a call. Or Jane Doe went to my pricing page, or I should say went to my features page. Maybe she's more in the consideration stage and I should send her some middle of funnel content. Then on the more anonymous side, you can use Facebook custom audiences or LinkedIn custom audiences and say, for anybody who goes to this page, that page, or the other page, send them awareness stage content ads. And if they go to these pages, then put them in this bucket. And with some of the more advanced tools like HubSpot, which unfortunately also comes with a heftier price tag, you can bring all these together to where you know how they're interacting with your ads, you know how they're interacting with their content, and you know how they're interacting with your emails. So as long as you at the beginning have an understanding of what it means for them to be in each stage of the buyer's journey. For instance, you're creating content that specifically speaks to people in the awareness stage so that you know if they go to that content, that's where they're at. And you're doing the same thing for the consideration stage and the decision stage. Then you can create a really powerful lead generation and lead nurturing machine.
Okay, and it just sounds complicated to me. Obviously, I've done it 100 times. You've done it a lot, but to a lot of people listening, it does sound really complicated. Now, I know HubSpot makes it easy. There's other tools like Marketo, they make it easy. So if you don't have one of those marketing automation systems, is it still possible to do it? Or are you saying to do what we're going to talk about today, you got to have one of those platforms?
If you want to focus on the digital advertising portion of it, anybody can do that, because they have within Facebook and within LinkedIn, within the ad platforms themselves, they allow you to create the audiences based on what content they interact with. So that's a great way for somebody who's just sort of starting to explore this idea of inbound marketing, and they really need traffic now. That's a great way to dip your toe in the water.
Okay, and then let's get specific with that. Like, you're talking about Facebook, Google, even LinkedIn, and how are you targeting the right buyers or people to your website? And are you talking about B2C, B2B, or both?
So B2B or B2C, it is something where, the longer the sales cycle, the more beneficial it is. If it's something like, if you're selling a pack of gum, or you're selling something where when the sales cycle is so compact that everything kind of happens right on top of each other, it doesn't work as, it's not as necessary. But for anything with a longer sales cycle, whether it's a car being sold to a customer or a enterprise software solution being sold to a business, it's going to come in very handy.
Right, but let's get a little bit more specific. So how do I know what to launch on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google when it comes to behavioral targeting or finding the right buyer?
Yeah, so where it starts with an understanding of who you're selling to. You're going to want to have at least a basic idea of the decision maker, like who's going to actually make a purchase. Mm-hmm. And that's ground zero. There's, of course, more. You can really get very complicated and build out a lot of different campaigns that target other people. But the first thing you want to do is figure out who's the decision maker, what problems do they have at the top of the funnel, and what questions do they have, and then what problems or questions do they have when they're trying to research solutions to that problem, and what questions or problems do they have when they're ready to actually make a purchase. So you want to create that content with those things in mind so that you know that you're providing value, which is sort of the main goal after actually selling your product when it comes to inbound marketing. So you create that content and you know who it addresses and at what stage of the sales process they're in. And then you just need to target them based on what content they've been on. So if they're looking at your content that you've specifically written to appeal to people in the awareness stage, well, if somebody is in that stage where they're just now starting to look up, like, should I buy an SUV or should I buy a sedan? Well, somebody like that, they're not ready for you to actually start pitching them on your bottom of funnel content. They're early on. So you want to find a way to get them in your funnel so that you can nurture that lead and then be there with decision stage or bottom of funnel content when the time comes.
And how do you know which stage they're in? Are these specific web pages that they're visiting, or are there other ways to
Right.
determine what stage they're in?
Yeah, so you're going to look at what pages they're interacting with. There are other things. I mean, it could get pretty sophisticated if you want to start leveraging third-party data, get into programmatic advertising, things like that. But just for general purposes, the easiest way to do it is to look at what web pages they've been on. So you would say here they're looking at a buyer's guide. Maybe they're probably in the consideration stage. They're looking at different types of sedans, let's say, and they're trying to figure out how to choose one. And then you have your decision stage content where, okay, they're actually thinking about test driving cars. They're really getting to the point where they're ready. And then on the flip side, you've got your just more general awareness stage, top of funnel content. And based on where they go, you can, in Facebook or just about any advertising platform, whether it's display or search or social, you can say, if they've been to this website, this one, this one, this one, this one, you can have a list of websites. If they've been to any of these websites, they're in the awareness stage. Put them in my awareness stage audience. If they've been to any of these websites, put them in my consideration stage audience. If they've been to any of these websites, put them in my decision stage audience. And then you create your campaigns based on where they're at in the buyer's journey and send them content that will appeal to them in that stage of the buyer's journey. And then also send them content for the next stage of the buyer's journey, but written in a way to help them make that transition to help move them down the funnel.
Okay, so a couple of things here for people that haven't done this. One, I think, unless you correct me, Roy, you're going to need something like HubSpot to kind of track all this and have it automatically deployed, because no one's going to want to do it manually.
So at least on the advertising side, Facebook will automatic, you give them the URLs and they will automatically move people through for you.
Got it. That's good. That's a good takeaway. I had forgotten that Facebook allows you to do that. I guess you just got to keep the URLs updated if there's any changes on your website. But for the most part, people aren't changing their website all that often. And does Facebook handle A/B testing of content for that? So let's say they hit a page and they're in the buyer's stage or their decision-making stage. And I wanted to say, okay, let's try this piece of content at the decision-making stage for half the users and another piece for the other half, and then let Facebook choose the winner. I mean, HubSpot can actually do that. Does Facebook do stuff like that?
So they'll do stuff like that for your ads and for some of the things, like they can track conversions and things like that. So you can split test quite a few things like that on Facebook. The issue, and of course this is an issue anytime you're doing split testing, is making sure that you're generating enough volume to actually get anything that's, really usable.
You could split test the ads, which I know, but can you split test the content that's coming from the ads? I guess you could have two different ads for the same URL. So that's how you'd probably do it. The two different ads lead to two different types of content.
So Facebook has a way to split test copy or creative or whatever. And you can now do that within Facebook.
Got it. That's good to know. Okay. The second piece of the second challenge I see for anyone just listening in on this is, oh my God, how much content do I have to create? And how am I going to get it all done? I mean, when you look at your average program, how much content and graphics and design are you actually doing for a end-to-end full-scale funnel program?
So it's a kind of thing that there's almost no industry where it can't grow, indefinitely and continue, you can just keep building content out forever. What I recommend is usually a business owner is going to have enough knowledge in their, just of their industry or of what they do, that you can you don't really have to get a whole lot of well, let's just say you can really start with about 3 pieces of content. You can say, I'm going to focus on, like, let's say you're working with a landscaping company and you find out what is it that drives the most revenue for them. Where do they want to focus? And maybe it's houses where they've got weeds in their yard, and that's how they get their foot in the door. So they really want to do that. So you create 3 pieces of content, one for each stage of the buyer's journey, based on that particular issue, talking about the consequences, talking about how to identify the problem, how to, the different ways to solve the problem, not just your way. And then finally, at the bottom, why your way is the best and why they should choose you over your competitors. That's a great start. You have those 3 pieces of content and you put together a Facebook ad campaign, or, depending on your industry, whatever works best, maybe LinkedIn, maybe display. And you see how it works. And as you go, you may want to just build onto that campaign further, or you may want to say, okay, that's going pretty good. Now let's do a campaign for people who need, trees pruned or something like that. So it can scale with you. It scales sort of according to your budget.
And if someone's doing this on their own, how much skills set do they have to have on copy and design? Does copy and design matter?
I think design is a nice to have, but if you don't try to get too fancy with it, you can usually get what you need from something like Canva, or just use a stock photography site with free stock photos like Pexels, or there's just tons of free stock photography sites out there.
If you don't have Canva, Canva is an online SaaS tool that allows you to create pretty good graphical elements through their templates or just their design palette. But go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, and so in Canva, which is free, is going to have not only you can get free stock photography there as well. And so that's going to make it the size and shape that you need it to be for your ads or anything else that you want to use it for. And then after that, as far as the copy goes, if you can just, if you have an idea, if you take a look at HubSpot's written about, inbound advertising, I've written about it. I've got enough content on my website, just in my blog post, to where you could learn everything you needed to write. And as long as you or somebody has the time, you could have that done for free. But if not, there's a lot of cheap options out there like iWriter and Content Cucumber is one I'm trying right now, where you can get content done for, you could get a whole campaign done for less than $500, probably.
Are these freelancers that are doing it?
So yeah, so there's Content Cucumber is one I'm interested to see how it goes, because if you've ever used Contentfly says we'll do 4,000 words for $250. I think it's $500 now a month. Well, Content Cucumber does that, but now they actually tell you get the writer that is assigned to you is your writer. So they actually will learn your branding and work with you each. So that one's $490 a month. So I'm interested to see how that goes, because I work with a lot of freelance writers, and iWriter is another one where it's freelance writers. I think you can they have different levels, and their premium, elite, whatever top package is, I think $100 for 1,000 or 2,000 words. So there's a lot of very affordable options out there. And then, all you really have to do is send them over the important points that they need to cover, or even just some websites that look about like what you're looking to do, and they'll go from there.
Okay, I like that. So I'm going to summarize what we've talked about so far before we move on. So what you're saying is Facebook can handle the whole buyer's journey if you know how to use it correctly, by targeting your ideal customer, and we didn't mention this, but you should have personas of your ideal customers, and targeting that way. And then as they go through the buyer's journey, which is just different phases of the buying cycle, Facebook, based on URLs, can target those people. They could even do some copy A/B testing, almost acting like a marketing automation system, but with ads to push people through the funnel. If you need design, Roy's recommending Canva. If you need copy, he just gave out 2 or 3 sites that you can go to and hire people for relatively inexpensively. Hopefully they're good. I'm going to try out Content Cucumber because I haven't used them before. But so you can have all that done pretty inexpensively. And then it's just your job or your ad person's job to make sure that they're putting these things in place correctly, so that's moving people through the sales funnel, which is ultimately what you want, right? Is sales. For most organizations, unless you're multi-billion, the number one goal is sales. Maybe number 2 is branding. So did I get everyone caught up at this point, Roy?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So moving forward, well, how does this program scale? Do you then take another product, another behavior? Do you just keep expanding this thing out, and then do you become too reliant on Facebook? Because I can't stand relying on any of these platforms. I think they all change and they all cater to the company spending $1 million or more on Facebook, Google, or LinkedIn, and everybody below it, it's like an afterthought.
Yeah, so the ultimate goal is to be able to rely on SEO and email marketing. So you're not going to, I wouldn't recommend that anybody turn their ads off assuming that they can get an ROI that makes sense. I think that's, unless you're generating so much business through organic that you can't handle it all. You're always going to want to have those ads going. It's just a matter of what budget you give to them and what priority you give to them. But the goal is that as you're creating this content that speaks to important questions and problems that people have, that content is going to rank. And so that's an important thing that you'll need to be focused on aside from this inbound marketing, advertising approach. You'll need to be focused on getting backlinks and be focused on doing your, putting together, maybe using Google Search Console and seeing what is the content I'm creating, what is it ranking for? And at first, it may not be ranking very high, but by looking and seeing what kind of queries you're triggering, that can give you ideas for other content, and it can give you ideas for how to make the content you've already created rank. And then to scale, that could happen in a number of ways. It could be like we talked about earlier. You say, okay, right now we've got the campaign that's focused on our weed eating service or our weed killing services, and now we want to shift focus we want to additionally focus on this other program. Then you can say we want to build out further this campaign we already have, where we know that the sorts of problems that we can solve with this solution there's multiple things we can do. So let's start out by focusing on this one problem, and then now we can build out a new campaign that focuses on another problem. So it's still the same product or service, but a different aspect of it. And those are the 2 main ways that you would scale. And then, of course, you could also try other advertising channels. You could really look at any way of driving traffic to the content that you're creating.
Yeah, and I would agree. You got to get to organic, but even SEO with Google, they change their algorithms all the time. It's kind of crazy.
Well, and not only that, but they're taking up more and more space with ads. It's getting harder and harder to get on the first page because there's just less and less space on the first page.
That really is.
I mean, these ads are getting bigger, and then you've got 4 ads now at the top, and they make it tough.
They make it tough. So your job as a marketer is really to get people into email database or texting database or something that you ultimately control. And you do that by working the various platforms. Don't rely on any one of them. I mean, if you're just relying on Facebook right now, good luck in the future. That's not a long-term sustainable business model. You've got to explore other avenues, and you got to figure out other ways of getting people to your site organically. And then once they're there, you've got to get them into a funnel that works. So that's a lot of testing. That's a lot of exploration into what works and what doesn't. It's not an easy job, but I'd say 90% of companies I've worked with don't have anything like that in place. So if you do put something like that in place, you're already ahead, most likely ahead of your competition, especially if you're constantly focusing on fine-tuning and tweaking it. It can literally make the difference between having a successful, we work with a lot of e-commerce companies, having a successful and profitable e-commerce business and not. So these are things that you've got to do. And Roy is dead spot on how to do it. I'd say his advertising model is more, you're either breaking into a new market with a new product, or you're a new startup and you're trying to break in. It's a great thing to do, great model. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a marketing automation service like HubSpot or Marketo. I don't even know what's HubSpot up to now, $30,000, $40,000 a year, depending on how many contacts you have.
To actually get enough features to be useful, it's at least $800 a month.
Yeah, and that's with what, 5,000, less than 5,000 contacts. And I'm not saying I know the answer to that. I'm just guessing based on. I've set up a lot of HubSpot, but not recently.
So it's expensive. Of course, the thing, and you touched on this already, but there are quite a few platforms that make this doable when they have the custom audiences. But it is really important not to get locked into one where your whole business is tied into it. And Facebook is a prime example of why you cannot let that happen. Because I know so many people who during the pandemic have gotten their ad accounts turned off, disabled. They've just totally been kicked out and they can't figure out why. I've looked, I can't figure out why. And Facebook just tells them this is our final decision, and tough luck. So you've got to understand the principles and always be ready to apply them somewhere else if some avenue gets shut down for some reason, because even if you're doing everything right, sometimes you can get kicked out of some of these networks.
And a lot of it's like not even done by a human being. It's done by a bot.
Yeah.
It's scary. So I always set up at least 2 advertising accounts on Facebook with my clients that are doing, one that's doing the main thrust of everything, and another's kind of on standby, and the other gets shut down. So you got to take those precautions. And that goes for Google. LinkedIn is a little less strict, I think. But anything that you're trying, maybe it's TikTok, any of the new platforms that you think can drive traffic, just be wary and don't be reliant on one. If you're, like I said, if your whole entire business is reliant on one network, you're in big trouble. One change. I have a client now I'm working with that they were always on page 1 or 2 of Google search results for a product that they were selling. And then 7 or 8 months ago, when Google did a big change in the way their algorithms, they all of a sudden weren't showing up in anything before page 10. Well, guess what happened to their business?
Yeah.
And they had nothing else set up. They didn't even have funnels set up to take advantage of their current customer base. So they instantly and overnight were losing hundreds of $1,000s a day. You don't want to be in that situation. That's not fun. You've got bills to pay, you've got employees and all that kind of stuff. So don't get caught in that trap.
That's nightmare fuel.
Yeah, it is. All right, so we're going to wrap things up. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should have talked about?
No, I think we went over a lot. It's it can be somewhat complicated. I try to break it down even more on my website at vertiscope.com, and I'd love to answer any questions people have over there, or anywhere that would be helpful.
Yeah, we're going to have that in the show notes. We're not really ready to shut things down yet, Roy. We've got 2 final questions. First, and I think I know the answer to this, because you had written this down to me. The hottest digital marketing technology that you recommend today.
Yeah. So, I mean, HubSpot is really, it's expensive, but it's very good. And I have not found anything less expensive that gets the job done in the way that HubSpot does.
Yeah, I would agree. They're more marketing focused. They do have a sales CRM, but it's nowhere near as good as Salesforce, but they still have one. It's kind of my go-to for companies over, I'd say 10 million annually. Unless you have got an e-commerce practice that's fast growing, you might want to implement it a little bit sooner. So HubSpot, I agree, good platform. And I've implemented that a lot at some of our customers. The second question is, who is the most influential person in marketing today?
I am really loving Chris Walker on LinkedIn. I feel like he kind of like just exploded onto the scene, at least on LinkedIn, and talks a lot about demand generation versus lead generation. And I don't agree with him on everything. I think on LinkedIn, you have to basically see everything in black and white, and not the nuance does not perform well on LinkedIn. So I don't agree with everything he says, but he's got some very interesting insights and has really been a pretty prolific content creator over the past 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, I've got to do some research on Chris. I probably have him on the show as well once I do that. So Chris, if you're listening, give us a call. But I would like to talk about demand generation versus lead generation. I think that'd be a good topic. So wrapping things up, I want you to go to Roy's site, vertiscope.com. He's got some free marketing sales funnel templates that you can use. And look into the show notes, click on it to take you right there. Check it out. And if you've got any additional questions for Roy, how do they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. If you just look for Roy Harmon, and that's the best way to find me.
All right. Well, Roy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And look forward to talking to you in the future about some other things that are related.
All right. Thanks, Mark.